The beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion. Russia launched more than 160 missiles at Ukraine. Martial law and general mobilization were announced. In a video, the president showed that the government remains in Kyiv and that Ukraine will fight to the end. The Russian army's attempt to capture Kyiv instantly failed. However, Russian forces approached Kherson, surrounded Chernihiv, entered Melitopol, and advanced toward many other cities in the south and southeast of the country. The Russian army proved it was targeting civilians. A missile strike hit a high-rise building in Kyiv. Volodymyr Zelensky signed an official application for Ukraine's membership in the EU, a largely symbolic gesture, as no one intended or intends to admit Ukraine to the European Union before the end of the war. Russian forces entered Kherson. The city became the only Ukrainian regional center they temporarily captured during the full-scale invasion. Russia carried out an armed seizure of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. In Russia, the State Duma approved a bill that penalizes the spread of so-called fake news about the Russian army. Basically, you cannot call a war a war. To date, hundreds of people have been convicted, from teenagers to the elderly. A Russian airstrike hit a hospital in Mariupol. 3 people, including a child, were killed, and 17 others sustained injuries of varying severity. An airstrike hit the drama theater in Mariupol. The building was sheltering over 1,000 people. Preliminary estimates suggest up to 600 people may have been killed. But because the city remains under Russian control, there is no confirmed information about the casualties from this or any other war crime committed by Russia in Mariupol. A Russian Kalibr missile struck a shopping center in Kyiv. At least 8 people were killed in the attack. A Russian missile strike destroyed part of the Mykolaiv Regional State Administration building, killing 37 people. It was officially announced that Russian forces had withdrawn from all previously occupied territories in the Kyiv region. The world learned about horrific war crimes committed by Russian soldiers, including mass rapes, torture, and murders of Ukrainian civilians. At least 1,346 civilians were killed in the Kyiv region during the Russian occupation. The United States announced new sanctions against Russia. Western countries froze 60% of Russia's foreign currency reserves, over $350 billion. The Chernihiv and Sumy regions were fully liberated from Russian troops. The enemy launched a Tochka-U missile strike on the Kramatorsk railway station square, where about 4,000 people, mostly women and children, were waiting for an evacuation train. 61 people, including 7 children, were killed, and 114 were injured. The flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, the missile cruiser Moskva, was struck by 2 missiles from Ukraine's Neptune system. The Moskva was one of the 6 largest ships in Russia's fleet and became the first cruiser sunk in the past 40 years. Russia began the battle for the Donbass. The minimum goal was to reach the administrative borders of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. As of the beginning of 2026, the goal has not been achieved. The first meeting in the Ramstein format was held, attended by defense ministers from participating countries. The monthly meetings of this group initiated the creation of an anti-Russian coalition of over 50 countries. President Joe Biden signed the Lend-Lease Act for Ukraine, although it was ultimately never implemented. The U.S. House of Representatives approved $40 billion in aid for Ukraine. Finnish President Sauli Niinisto announced that Finland would apply for NATO membership. After 86 days of defending Mariupol, the city's defenders received orders to cease resistance to save their lives. Ukrainian fighters tied down significant Russian forces, preventing them from being deployed to other fronts. Russia fully occupied Mariupol, or at least what remained of it after months of heavy shelling. Sweden's foreign minister, Ann Linde, signed Sweden's application to join NATO. The first known Ukrainian drone strike on a Russian oil refinery took place in Novoshakhtinsk in the Rostov region. The first M142 HIMARS multiple rocket launchers provided by the United States arrived in Ukraine. Russian forces carried out an airstrike on Kremenchuk in the Poltava region. 2 cruise missiles hit a shopping mall, killing 21 people and injuring 66. Russian missiles hit a high-rise building and a recreation center in Odessa. 22 people were killed and 38 were injured. The Russian military fired missiles at 2 residential buildings in Chasiv Yar, Donetsk region. For 5 days, rescuers worked through the rubble, searching for people who might have been trapped under the collapsed buildings. 48 people were killed in this attack, and 9 were injured. Russian missiles hit the center of Vinnytsia, injuring more than 200 people and killing 26, including 3 children. A mass killing of Ukrainian prisoners of war occurred at the Olenivka camp. Approximately 50 prisoners were killed, and over 130 were injured in an explosion organized by the occupying forces. Explosions occurred at the Saki air base in temporarily occupied Crimea. This marked the first high-profile strike by the armed forces of Ukraine on military targets in occupied Crimea. A counteroffensive by the armed forces of Ukraine began in the Kharkiv region. Almost all of the region was liberated from Russian occupation in a rapid counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces. The Iranian-made Shahed 136 drone was used by Russia for the first time in the Kharkiv region. Since then, these drones have become part of the largest attacks launched against Ukraine. To date, Russia has launched more than 50,000 such drones at Ukraine. After most of the Kharkiv region was liberated, evidence of multiple war crimes, including mass graves and torture chambers, was discovered. In Izium, 447 bodies of men, women, and children were exhumed from a mass burial site. Russia began its partial mobilization. The largest prisoner of war exchange since February 2022 took place. A pseudo-referendum began in the Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk regions. The occupiers disregarded the fact that they did not fully control any of these regions, not to mention the regional capital of Zaporizhia. Russia launched 16 S-300 missiles at Zaporizhia, hitting a car market area and a convoy of civilian vehicles on the city's outskirts. 32 people were killed, and 86 were injured. Russia amended its constitution to include 4 Ukrainian regions that it partially and temporarily occupied. This has no legal validity. Neither Ukraine nor the international community recognized Russia's pseudo-referendum regarding the occupied territories. Ukraine's borders were established in 1991 and remain unchanged. However, the de facto situation is entirely different. Explosions damaged the Crimean Bridge, with several spans collapsing into the sea. The bridge was illegally constructed between 2016 and 2018 and connects Russia to the temporarily occupied Crimean Peninsula. Russian forces launched the first massive missile strike on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, fired 84 missiles, killing 23 people and injuring 105. In the following months, Russia continuously attacked Ukraine's energy facilities, attempting to deprive millions of civilians of electricity, water, and heating as winter approached. The first large-scale attack by Iranian kamikaze drones targeted Kyiv. The armed forces of Ukraine liberated Kherson, the only regional capital that Russian forces managed to capture after the full-scale invasion began. The fifth Russian strike on Ukraine's energy infrastructure involved around 70 missiles. For the first time in Ukrainian history, all 4 nuclear power plants were forced to disconnect from the grid, and cities were left without power for many hours. 10 people were killed. The European Parliament recognized Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism and a state that uses terrorist methods. Russian forces launched the 6th massive missile strike on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, firing over 70 missiles. This time, Ukrainian forces conducted preemptive strikes on military targets deep inside Russian territory, damaging 2 Tu-95 bombers and 3 Tu-22M3 bombers. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made his first trip abroad since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. He visited the United States, where he met with Joe Biden and delivered a speech in the U.S. Congress. In 2022, air raid sirens in Ukraine sounded 14,870 times. In regions free from occupation, they went off at least 4 times a day. The maximum was 189 times in a single day.